Trial chambers have the best loot of any structure in Minecraft, like the incredible mace, but they're filled with difficult mobs and dangerous traps, so here's how to find and raid them. The first step to raiding the trial chambers is finding the trial chambers, and the way to do it is the cartographer villager. Now it'll unlock this trade on its third upgrade. So it's about to go to its second upgrade now. It'll go from asking for paper to asking for glass panes, with the second of those being incredibly easy to get large amounts of. So we can quickly upgrade this, and there is a 2/3 chance that it'll give us the Trial Chambers Explorer map for its third trade, and it did. We can buy it needing emeralds and also a compass. Now that we have that map, we can take a look at it, and in the bottom left there's that symbol that indicates the trial chambers. Now regardless of where it is, you want to start by centering your marker in it, and you'll see that it'll end up lining up with it with the pixels there. Now if this was on the surface, we would just dig a 2x2 tunnel going straight down. Now you can do this exact same thing if you're underwater, and just place blocks above your head if you want. Dig between two different blocks so that you're always suspended on one block or the other, so once you do dig into a large cave or a dangerous area you could fall into, you'll still be suspended on the edge of that block. Now the trial chamber tends to generate around y-32 to y0, which means that we're very likely going to have to dig until we're in the deep slate layer to find this trial chambers. However, overall parts of trial chambers can go anywhere from as low as where the bedrock layer is, to as high up as y20 or even higher. The trial chambers also do not generate directly next to each other ever, and they do generate in z-coordinate lines, which means that if you go straight north or south from where the current trial chamber you found is, you have a higher chance of finding one in front of that one. Now eventually, after digging into the deep slate, we're gonna hit the trial chambers, and it looks like we just did, running into this tough wall. So this is the first way of finding trial chambers, and you can see this Trial Explorer map successfully led us to one right here. However, there's a few other methods that you may find better. The second method is finding trial chambers using Chunkbase.com. So on Chunkbase, which is the easiest method, you can type in your world seed right here, which you can find by typing /seed in your world. Then you can look around and go for these symbols right here, which is of the trial spawner, which shows for us the trial chamber. And they're fairly common, all being within a few hundred blocks of each other, so you can just follow these coordinates as well. You can also find the trial chambers a lot more naturally, because if you're exploring through normal sized caves, they can generate right into them with these exposed giant tough walls, but even copper blocks like these lanterns being able to be fully exposed in the cave wall. But Minecraft realized that it was pretty easy to find trial chambers this way, so you might be surprised if I said that there would normally be a giant trial chambers completely exposed inside of this cave. However, Mojang decided that in giant caves, the trial chambers would be covered by many layers of deep slate and surrounding blocks so that you couldn't notice that they were there. But to the keen eye, you can still notice where this structure spawns. When you're exploring around a cave and you happen to see some strange walls poking out like this that have rounded edges and very sharp angles that lead into the surrounding cave walls, then you very likely found where a trial chamber is. So once we've found generation like this, we want to dig diagonally into it. We can find our way into this trial chambers right here. So I would suggest using a combination of all of these methods to find the trial chambers, as they can be a fairly difficult structure to get a lot of. But now that we've found this awesome structure multiple ways, what are the actual items you need to bring to raid it? To start, you want to bring some logs so that you can have chests to store these items. You want to have a shield or maybe two for the skeletons that are here, a good source of food like maybe some steak, ender pearls for quick getaways if you have them. You also want a good smite sword, as well as a good bow with power on it, and some arrows for that. Then some bundles, which can also be used to pick up the items in this structure, but these are optional. And you also want to have a good set of diamond armor, and some torches to light up the structure, As you can see, it is incredibly dark, and as another optional item, bringing these splash potions of healing can be a great tool to fighting undead mobs. So it's always a good idea to bring a bed and sleep in it so that your spawn point is set. What types of rooms can we actually find in this trial chambers? Well, the first type is the corridor. Now the corridor are these giant hallways that most people are probably aware of, as it's the main room of the trial chambers, but as you can see, it can also have some mob spawners in it. So although it's not the most dangerous room, it definitely has some danger in it, but also has a lot of treasure. So yes, the main hallways with about 3 walkways and 3 floors and some spawners. That is the corridors, and there's often up to 2 of them in one trial chambers. One type of generation is these large drops which go between different sections. In these areas, we have these triple beds here which could be used to set your spawn point before descending lower down. However, very often as well, these corridors will connect up to rooms called the Atrium. And these rooms are pretty easy to identify, as they'll have pixel art of different mobs on them on the walls. The only exception to that actually is this one art right here. I believe it's meant to represent the swirling pattern that's on the chiseled tough bricks, but overall it's really not much compared to all the other patterns that can spawn. We can see a different example of the Atrium. There are a few other arts that can spawn here, but apparently this structure just wanted to have 2 spider variants here. Now the Atrium as well is just this wide open room with a grand staircase leading to a different area as well as a fountain, and these rooms do not have any trials in them but often connect into other rooms. Now this room that we've just gone into is actually the entrance room, the only other type of room that is not directly challenged based. The entrance room, I guess, is the room that Mojang would expect the player to go through, but again, there's really nothing that would make you necessarily mine into this room at the beginning or not. Now inside of this entrance room, we'll find that there's a stairway leading us up to the second portion, and there's basically a nature display area here. So it can be a desert little scene, it can be a mangrove swamp tree sort of scene, or it can just be an oak tree or other similar scenes. Now as well as that, again, we have some chests in here, but also you can often find beds inside of this room. This room specifically has a few secrets. The first one being this trapdoor here, which can lead us from the upper to the lower sections of this. There's actually this copper grate, and if we dig these 2 areas out, there's a door here, and it leads us to a small base area with better loot in this chest. In this room specifically, if we go down to the downstairs portion, there's a fun build here, which if you notice is meant to represent a keyhole and where one of those trial chambers keys would fit. Now the only other type of room, before we get into the main chambers, is one that's actually only inside of Java Edition, and these are called the Encounters. They basically exist of what you could consider a small trial chambers challenge. For an example, spawners that generate at least mobs that you would assume would be easier. So more or less, this is giving us an encounter with the trial chamber danger, giving us an easier example of one to defeat, and yet still having there be a challenge. But this can be a good warm-up if you happen to find it first. Inside of this room as well is a few trial vaults. For an example, this standard vault here, but there's also an ominous vault up here. Alright, we've gone through every other room type. Let's go on to the main chamber rooms. These doors that are found on the sides of the corridors, as well as the floor above it, which is up here. These are the main areas where you're going to have entrances to the other rooms, and this one specifically is fairly interesting as it gives us the ability to kill these mobs in sort of a mob farm way to start, but eventually once we get inside of here, we're coming in contact with a much more difficult chamber. With this one there's 2 different heights, and on the upper height we have a lot of mob spawners, including this one which has these baby husks, and on the lower floor here we just have an empty floor, but you can fall down into it. Let's see what another chamber has to offer for us. And there can be other types of entrances to chambers, like this one where we have to cut through a copper grate to get to it. And let's say this style of room here, we have a circular room full of all these challenging trial spawners, with a lot of them here showing the full extent of what these trials are meant to be. That's an example of what that type of room is like. So those are the rooms that generate what treasure is here? Well, the first one is just the blocks that generate in it, and in my opinion, this is probably one of the biggest treasures that are found here, because you have access to more or less infinite waxed oxidized copper blocks. That's right, every single one of these blocks has also had a honeycomb applied to it, and better yet, this is also true for these unoxidized full copper blocks. So I would suggest at some point going through this structure, collecting many stacks of both copper and oxidized copper blocks. The decorated pots, if broken, can have some loot inside of them, and there's a rare chance for some very amazing loot in here. So for an example, I believe 1 in over 300 of these pots can contain a diamond block inside of it, and it's a good idea to collect these pots as they have the flow and guster pottery shards in them. Now these barrels contain a certain loot table, which does not include the most valuable blocks, but it's still worthwhile to take a look at what's in there. Also around this structure in different areas we have chests. Now these chests can have different loot depending on which type of chests they are. These sorts of treasure trial chamber rooms can be pretty common. Looking inside this chest we find a trident, as well as some emeralds. And also you may notice with this variant there's actually a trap here. Let's say we fall down it here, then we cannot get out and we're going to land on that stalagmite. You also may notice there's these barrels with hoppers leading into them. These never contain any loot, but are instead, I believe, a strange mechanism of quickly throwing valuable items in here to be saved. However, the biggest source of loot items inside the trial chambers is by far the trial vault, and it will give you a random assortment of different valuable items. However, this is not just true with this vault, generating around the trial chambers in different areas. It has 3 skulls in it. You right click on this, it closes, and we get some items from this vault's loot drops. Now this vault is what can give us the heavy core and the wind charge enchantment, which can give us the ability to create a very powerful mace weapon. So when we enter most rooms of the trial chambers, we're greeted by the trial spawners. And how exactly do these trial spawners work? Well, you can start by noticing around the base of the spawner, it actually tells us what mob it's going to spawn. Now if you want to stop one of these from spawning mobs, we're going to surround it fully in blocks. Once that's happened, the spawner will no longer spawn any new mobs. Be aware that inside of these trial rooms as well, we have these dispensers, and these can have loot in them also, but very dangerous items. There are 11 different types of trial spawners, and it's good to remember that whether or not you do a standard or ominous trial, this spawner will only ever spawn the type of mobs that it's assigned originally. So this spawner right here, again with the chiseled tuff, shows us that it spawns the breeze. The trial spawner, completely surrounded in mossy cobblestone, spawns zombies. The trial spawner that's covered in actually chiseled sandstone is what spawns the husk. Then a trial spawner covered in cobwebs with stone beneath them is the spider spawner. The one with moss blocks spawns slime, and the one with stone brick spawns silverfish. This one is the most dangerous and you want to look out for it. When it's half cobblestone, half mossy cobblestone, that indicates that this is a baby zombie spawner. Now I suppose to indicate the poison, having half cobwebs on top of stone and half red mushrooms on top of podzol, we have the cave spider spawner. After that, with packed ice, we have the stray spawner, and with bone blocks around it there's the skeleton spawner, and finally the brand new bogged spawner has the bone blocks around it as well as podzol with the mushrooms on top. But what about the number of mobs and how many we have to defeat at a time to eventually get ourselves a trial key? So after they've spawned some mobs, there's exactly 6 slime here, and the reason why is quite simple. There are 2 spawners that do slime, and a single trial spawner can only have 3 mobs out at a time from it. But you may also notice as I kill these slimes, more of them eventually spawn, because there's a total of 6 mobs that I have to defeat from every trial spawner. So because of this, once we've defeated a total of 6 mobs from the spawner, with 3 being active at a time, we'll get our reward. Though with baby zombie spawners, thankfully only 2 are active at a time, and with breeze spawners only 1 are active at a time, but it also only spawns a total of 2 breezes. Now, as well as that, the trial spawner will try and spawn a new mob if it has any left to spawn every single second. And once we've killed all 6 mobs that have generated from that, we will then get ourselves the treasure from this spawner. Now that this trial spawner has been defeated, it's deactivated, and that means that it will not spawn any mobs again for a full 30 minutes. Now, trial chambers spawners can be used again and again, but their vaults cannot. However, when Mojang designed the trial chambers, one of their biggest focuses was multiplayer. That's right, this structure is made much better when you have multiple players raiding it. So with one player with me, we're now going to have 50% more mobs, which means a total of 9 mobs are going to spawn from each one of these spawners. However, we're also going to get double the loot. That means that, for an example, we could get 2 trial keys from this. Now, both of us are next to these spawners, and you can see that they're spawning more mobs. There's also going to be a larger total of active mobs, so we can have more than just 3 mobs active. This would average out to about 4 mobs active. And over here you can see there's 2 of these potions of regeneration. So the spawner will give you exactly double of what it would normally give you with every new player added. That technically means you could have 10 players here and get 10 of these keys. So the vaults can only ever be opened up once per player. However, that means that we can have multiple players open up the same vault. Let's say here, I'll try the vault. However, if Sam DeCam tries opening this spawner, you can see it'll actually open up all the way for him as well, and there's even some amazing loot with that armor trim. I kinda wish I got that drop. There are 11 different trial chamber mobs that can spawn, and let's talk about how to defeat each one individually. To start, there's the breeze. The spawner right here can only spawn a total of 2, and there's only 1 active at a time. However, this room gives them some advantages, such as this water bucket, so you can just remove it from there to stop it from making that go. You can always have blocks above your head for this too, but the trick is to get in close to the breeze, as close as you can. Just hit it with as many direct attacks as you can. You can also try hitting it with a bow, but overall the breeze spawners are pretty easy, and that's how you defeat one. A mob added in 1.21 along with the trial chambers is the Bogged. And this mob specifically spawns quite a bit within this structure. It hits you with poison arrows, but also has some special abilities. One of them is the fact that it has these mushrooms on top of it. And interestingly enough, we can actually shear those off, randomly being red or brown or both. And so because of that, you can see it's very dangerous if you don't use a shield. However, with the shield, we can avoid the damage from this for quite a while, till we get into safer positions. But be aware, as you can see, their poison will wear you down quite a bit. Now you can also always try and fight them at a ranged distance. Also, this is especially a structure where smite is important, as the smite 5 sword I have here, even though it's just diamond, will still instantly one-hit kill these Bogged. Which means that this room may be a little bit easier than originally seems. Get the mobs to fight each other so that they don't fight you and they're distracted and they're also hurting each other. Just be aware with all these spawners, these Bogged can definitely overpower you. The texture of the bogs indicate where they generally spawn, which is the swamp as well as mangrove swamp. And there's not just Bogged, all 3 skeleton variants, the stray, the Bogged, as well as the standard skeleton spawn here, and the way to defeat them all is fairly similar. You want to block their arrows with the bow, but another good trick is to make them hit each other. The other thing is too, you generally do want to be fairly close to the skeletons when defeating them. You can always fire back with a ranged weapon at them as well, but I found it's better to actually attack them more directly, with the vital thing being to always bring a shield to skeleton fights. There's also multiple types of spiders that can spawn, and the best way of defeating these is with ranged weapons, as they have a very large size so they're easy to hit, and this is especially useful with the other variant. This is a poison spider spawner, better known as a cave spider spawner, and these especially are something you want to defeat with ranged weapons. This way we're not going to get the poison effect of these cave spiders, and it's interesting that on both this spawner and the Bogged spawner, that poison effect is being represented by these red mushrooms. Kind of strange considering that mushroom soup is made out of these too. And in large numbers, these cave spiders can be one of the most dangerous mobs that spawn in the trial chambers. Zombie mobs and their variants can also spawn here, so we can find just standard zombie spawners around here. The smite sword does help. The husk is also a mob that can spawn here, and so with this mob it's pretty similar to defeat as the normal zombie. But getting food can be difficult here, so if it bites you and inflicts you with a hunger effect, that could eventually be an issue. However, Mojang decided to make there be, that's right, baby zombie spawners, and so this incredibly difficult spawner is one that you want to be very careful of, and there are a few tricks to defeating these baby zombies. Now one easy trick with all the fast baby zombies is just to pile up 2 blocks. They can't hit you from up here, and then you can hit them easily. Then they're not going to give you any damage. However, another trick is to place down a boat, and then you can capture the baby zombies in the boat, and it's much easier to attack them if they're contained like this. And we've now defeated these baby zombie spawners. There's only 2 other types of mobs you can encounter in the trial chambers. The first is the slimes. Now one of the most important tricks with the slimes is not to be very close to them, as they can give you damage rapidly many times in a row. Because of this, you actually want to use ranged weapons to defeat at least the largest of these slime. Once you've done that, you can go through and get them. Finally, there's the easiest mob here, which is these silverfish spawners. But using sweeping edge is a great way of doing this. But another way is if you burn them. So if you place down a bit of fire, they're all going to walk through it to get to you, and so because of that, you can see they're going to start burning to death, and that's specifically how you defeat all those mobs in the trial chambers. Around the trial chambers, there are the ominous vaults, and the ominous vaults require the ominous trial key to open. But the only way to get this ominous trial key is to defeat an ominous trial spawner. Now right here we have ominous bottles. These are dropped by pillagers, and you can also get them from some of the treasure inside of the trial chambers. They're the standard ominous bottle, going up to 2, 3, 4, 5. Now the effect itself is not stronger, however it lasts for longer. So it is 15 minutes per level, and let's say we drink the one with 2, it should be 30 minutes. We will start with the bad omen effect. However, if we get near one of these trial spawners, they are going to turn with that amazing skull animation into an ominous trial spawner, and our effect here is going to turn into trial omen for 30 minutes. What this means is we have these amazing skull particles around us, as well as turning every single one of these trial spawners into an ominous trial spawner. So let's break down all the things that an ominous trial spawner changes. Now when a trial spawner becomes ominous, it doesn't spawn a different mob than it normally was, but it makes it more difficult in some way. So with the breeze here, for example, this spawner, instead of having 1 breeze out at a time for a total of 2 breezes, so that'll give us 4 breezes instead of 2, and 2 active breezes instead of 1, which significantly increases the difficulty of these. But when we apply this effect of double the mobs that cannot wear armor to, let's say, a spider spawner, you see the true difficulty that this causes, as this will allow the spawner to have 6 active spiders at a time. However, when we encounter a trial spawner that turns ominous that is able to spawn mobs that can hold weapons and armor, well, we get a much more difficult and different result. In fact, if you want to get some ominous trial keys a lot easier, I would suggest never doing the ones with mobs that can wear armor and hold swords. So any armor they'll be given is trimmed. And as well as that, their armor can be chain, diamond, and iron. Now it'll never drop any of this armor, and mobs that would not normally hold a weapon are made the most dangerous of all. That's because things like husks or zombies are able to now hold a sword, and that can be anything between a diamond sword, an iron sword, or an enchanted iron sword. We are fighting a true well-equipped army of mobs. So I've now drank an invisibility potion. We can observe the effect that happens from this trial spawner. It's gonna spawn projectiles. So every single 8 seconds, it drops one above a player or mob around it. This one over here spawned above this bogged. Now what happens is it spins in the air like that for 3 to 6 seconds. Now what determines the projectiles that appear around the trial spawner? One thing you can first notice is that they're set. So we keep getting these splash potions of speed, and the projectiles that come out keep being wind charges. The trial spawner picks one item from two categories. The first one is a potion, the second one is a projectile. For the potion, it can be a lingering potion of wind charged, oozing, weaving, infested, strength, speed, or slow falling, and it'll keep throwing those at the player or a projectile. Now for the projectiles it can pick, it could also be an arrow or an arrow of poison, an arrow of slowness 4, even a fire charge or a wind charge. So that's everything about how to defeat the ominous trial spawners. Now the main thing that they give us is the ominous trial key, and this is a 30% chance it'll drop it. So you need to defeat a decent amount of these to get a lot of ominous trial keys. Now the ominous trial spawner works just like the normal trial spawner, where you can open it up once and it consumes a key, and there'll also be particles showing us that it is able to be opened up, and when we right click on there it'll be used and we can never use it again, and it'll give us a few items from a random assortment of very valuable treasures. And now let's take a good look at all the loot you can get not only from the ominous vault but also from the standard vault. Now here's the list of what we're getting out of the vault. Now this will take 3 items from this list, but overall it's dropping somewhat standard loot that you'd more or less find in the chests around the trial chamber anyway. There is these ominous bottles as a 16.5% chance. It can also give you diamonds as an 8.5% chance, and some random enchanted books as a 6.2% chance. You can still get the bolt armor trim, 4% chance you can get the precipice music disc, the same chance for the guster banner pattern, and a trident as a 2% chance. Now here's the list of all the items you can get from the ominous vault. There's 3 items that are drawn from this list. There's about a half chance of getting an emerald, and about a half chance of getting a wind charge, and you can see also that there's arrows of slowness 4, diamonds, and just some sort of general good loot. The flow armor trim is a 22.5% chance, and the enchanted golden apple as a 22.5% chance. And then as a 7.5% chance we have the creator music disc, and also we have the heavy core, and it's only a 7.5% chance that you'll get it, which means you're gonna have to open over 13 ominous trial vaults to get this, which is an average of over 2 trial chambers. These enchanted books down here are a random chance of some of the enchantments you would need for the mace, but the most important one is down here, a 5.5% chance for level 1 wind burst. This is a very powerful mace enchantment that I'll get into in a different video, but actually this right here makes the rarest item in the entire game be getting a wind burst 3 book. So the heavy core, one of the rarest items in the game, you can place it kind of like a player head, but it's not rotatable. You can see though it makes this very interesting item, an interesting texture you can place on the ground. But to make the mace, you take the heavy core and put a breeze rod below it, of course obtained by killing the breeze. This gives you the mace weapon, which again you can enchant with 3 enchantments that are specific to it. This weapon is incredibly good and gives us an attack where we can hit on the way down. However, you have to use it in specific situations for it to really show its full power. Anyway, that's actually everything about the trial chambers in Minecraft, at least that I can cover in this video. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to press the like button, subscribe for more content, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye!